Oh, I love it. It is Zach Martin on Tick TV. I'm with Spencer Drate. We had him on last week, and I decided that we need to do a series about album covers and 45 jackets. So there you have The Road to Ruin, the Ramones, which is really cool because obviously the topography, isn't that what it's called? Is that
Yeah,
right?
typography is exactly right. Type design, or
Oh, okay.
typography design.
Talk about the Ramones' Road to Ruin. Why don't you show us that one?
I want to first say that this will be a series of shows which will encase 36 total albums, the majority from our Art of Vinyl cover show that Zach was was very honored to have him do a voiceover on, and Patrick Bombard produced with us, and Judith and I curated. So these covers you are seeing, this is the first interview on just my album cover design. The second one will be of mine and Judith's combined albums, and then the third or fourth will be the other designers' great covers. So it's like a whole series. Yeah, I'll start off with, in a chronology of my design life, as we'll do in the second interview, in the order that I design covers, most of them for Sire, but I'll tell you when I didn't. So let's start with
Road to Ruin, the Ramones. Wow.
Road to Ruin.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, when I see that, I'm thinking, holy cow, I got to have that right with my comic book collection. Whatever I do, don't ruin the cover.
Yeah, that's like, it's a real cartoon play that was the artwork done by the famous John Holmstrom of the famous Punk magazine. And I did the typography design. And basically, it was actually a silver with four-color printing. So the circle and the speakers, the outlines are in silver, and the rest is a four-color printing. So it's paid extra money. Uh, the back cover has a Danny Fields photograph, which is one of his best. He was a great photographer, Danny. The inner sleeve is pictures by Bob Gruen, most of it, and I believe Chip Rock did one photograph, but most of them are Bob Gruen's photographs on the inner sleeve. And of course, the back are just the lyrics that we love to read.
Yes. Well, I would equate to reading the lyrics is like when you're eating cereal and you are looking at the ingredients and everything on the box. And
Yeah.
that particular album, the songs I remember, it was Needles and Pins,
Mm.
and she's the one Want to Be Sedated. Am I right about that? Were those tracks on
Yes.
that?
We've got. I want to have something to do. I want everything. Don't come close, which I did a 45 sleeve. I don't want to. Needles and Pins. Great song, right?
Yeah, Needles and Pins.
I want to
Yeah.
be sedated. Go mental. Questioningly. She's the one, and Bad Brain, and It's a Long Way race.
I think she's the one in I Want to Be Sedated. We're on the same 45. I can't remember, but it's a long time ago. I mean, what's the year of that album, for God's sakes?
We got here 1978.
All right, that's a long time ago. It's hard to remember
With
that stuff.
yeah, for Sire Records, which I did a lot of album cover work with at that time.
How did you get to how did they go in the direction of the cartoon with the Ramones? I know that they always like to have photos of them with their leather jackets on, from what I remember.
Yeah, there's a concept by someone else credited on the album, and he gave that concept to John Holmstrom. John Holmstrom is really the one that put that artwork into what you see on the cover. He made the whole thing happen. It's going from a sketch into a finalized picture. And John was great at artwork. He just a lot of great punk. And again, he illustrated for Punk magazine, which was a classic. So he had that whole background of punk, very big time in interviews. I mean, if you talk about punk, you got to interview John Holmstrom.
Well, we'll have to have him on one of these days, because the one thing that we do on New HD on our
Yeah.
radio player, which eventually, hopefully, we get a signal in New York, is we take time to play punk tracks. Saturday night, we have 2
Oh,
hours of
wow.
punk. And then during my show in the afternoon on the Big Fat American Rock Show, I do one punk song per hour. And you'd be
Wow.
amazed at how many great punk songs are out there that nobody's really heard of. So my whole thing is make a playground for the artists so people can actually
Right.
hear these songs. And then, on top of all of that, some of the songs we play are either on 45 or vinyl. We try to locate them. There are plenty of record stores in the village. I don't know what's open now after COVID-19. I don't know what's going to be left, but it's just a lot of fun for me to go to the record store in the village and find what I'm looking for, like the vintage vinyl places. All right. So what's
Yeah.
our next album?
We got Alda Reserve. So the front cover symbol is by Brad Ellis, the lead singer of the group. And it's a really nice cover. It was in a lot of design shows. It's very simple, but I think a great design. And the back has a nice photograph, of the group. And basically that's it. But it's a very simple, I think, very simple design cover, but very nice. It turned out to be very nice, the elements.
I like that blue, that shade of blue. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
It's almost like a royal blue with with metallic type of coloring in there. I can't really tell, but there's like is there a silver aspect to it?
No,
In that
actually, it's what you just mentioned. It's a blue. The type is in like an orange, and of course the cover is in white. So it gives it's almost like a Japanese symbol of some sort, or a
Oh.
Franz Klein painting. It's like
Oh,
it has that whole reminiscence, but it's just as soon as you look at it, it really has this really nice design look. I think.
what are some of the tracks that are on it?
We have
I like looking at those.
yeah, Some Getaway, Dressed for Love, Cure Me, Pain Is Mine, Overnight Jets, Ancient Lies, That Was Summertime, Whiter Than White, Love Goes On. Love Goes On was their track that they liked, the main one.
Oh yeah, I guess the main release. Yeah, the
That
tracks.
that was 1979, and again for Sire Records.
All right. What is our next goodie that we have here?
The next goodie. Now we get into the grit of it. Our favorite.
The Fear of Music. Oh, this is a great album.
The plate, a metal plate pattern, conceived by Jerry Harrison, and I worked on the typography with David Byrne. So we picked this typewriter type, and I gave it this green, Dayglow green special mix ink for the type. And it's a very simple cover. I mean, this is the front and this is the back. So the pattern goes front to back straight, minimal type. And if I take out the inner sleeve, you have they call it thermography photograph.
Wow.
And apparently they don't know who the person was. Who was photographed. But anyway, it's a thermography photograph. And then on the back, you have all the lyrics in typewriter type. It's a very cool cover. It's like, so that's, at Fear of Music won, it was nominated for a Grammy in album packaging, 1979. It's in the MoMA Permanent Collection. It was in a MoMA show in 2016. It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archival collection, and it's in our Art of Vinyl cover show. So, I mean, this thing has such recognition as an album cover in history, Zach?
Yeah, it's one of those things it as soon as you see it, what it is. Well, if you're old enough and if you're a Talking Heads fan, and as I said before, in college, I was known for my love of the Talking Heads. The Fear of Music has some great tracks on it. We'll talk about some of the tracks, but I just want people to realize how big of an album this was. It went to number 21 on the Billboard 200 charts in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And you might say it had a worldwide appeal because it hit the charts in Canada, the UK, and New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Life During Wartime, the song that everybody knows from the album for the most part, only got to 80 in the top 100, and Izimbra went to 28 in the U.S. club charts. And here are the tracks: Izimbra, Mind, Paper, Cities, Life During Wartime, Memories Can Wait, and Inside to Air, Heaven, Animals, Electric Guitar, and Drugs. So,
I mean, I got to tell you, Zach, I went into Sire Records one time, and John Gillespie, the art director, he loved my work. And he told me of a story of Talking Heads they threw beer bottles at him in L.A. And
well, I get, if it was the Whiskey a Go-Go or the Troubadour, I can see that happening, because that was not the place for that style of music. The place for that style of music would be CBGB's.
Right.
And maybe the Bitter End. You can get away with a lot in the Bitter End is very small, by the way. And I didn't remember CBGB's being that large either. But right next to CBGB's, and we'll eventually have Chris France on and ask him, there was a pizza place right next to it. Do you remember that?
I really don't, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, listen, I was a college kid going to CBGB's. What do we like in college? Beer and pizza, and music and other things. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. It's sort of like the Blues Brothers. Remember? They're the good old boys.
Oh, yeah.
At first, they're throwing bottles at them, and
they
got the chicken wire.
The net.
They ended up owing them money for the beer.
And exactly.
So
they have to run away.
Yeah. When I think of Talking Heads, to me, I know that, they met in Rhode Island, right? Rhode Island Institute of Technology or something like that. I would say that that's quintessential, Bowery type of rock and roll. I mean, it just.
Yeah, I have to you just brought up a point, which I didn't mention. Jerry Harrison went to Harvard. Chris, Tina, and David went to RISD, and I had a Yale faculty background. The Yale and RISD go together. It's basically a Joseph Albers based design learning tool course. You learn about color, you learn about type, dynamic type. And so the background, that RISD background, the thing about Talking Heads, also interesting, is that I have a vast collection of LPs, and especially 45s. They were really good visually with all their product. You go down the line, right, of their album covers and 45s, they had really good art treatment. They were designers, they were artists. So it was a treat for me. They understood where I was coming from. And David Byrne used to tell the art director he loved my typography design. I was on volume radio with Judith with Mark Goodman and Alan Light. And they asked me how I felt working with David Byrne. I freaked out, because I really freaked out. But he loved my work. So everything worked like a charm. And we had the elements on this album. And I was very honored to work on it, because it's one of the most iconic albums in history.
All right, what's our next album?
Well, we have a famous one here, too. We have on the schedule, the chronological.
End of the century. Yeah, I was going to say that. Wow.
So that's the famous Mick Rock front cover. The story was this, Mick only did a couple of shots. One was without this leather jackets and with the leather jackets. So this is the front cover with, obviously, the T-shirts. And then if I take the inner sleeve out, you'll see what I did with the leather jacket photograph. And this is kind of famous because this has been used on the overseas 45 sleeves for the Ramones at that time.
Yeah. Now, what's the effect that you did on the actual photo itself?
This is like you convert the photograph into what we call posterization. So it knocks out all the medium tones, and it's just left with black and nothing, literally. It's like, look at it. It's amazing. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and it turned out to be a great photograph, right? And the group really loved it. I was interviewed on Marky Ramone's Sirius show, and he said to me, the group loved this idea, and they were thinking about using it for the cover.
I like it. I could, what I would do with that if I were them, hindsight 2020, I would have I'd have two different album covers and let people buy one of each, sell more of them.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Right?
That's a great move. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the tracks on that one. Do you remember Rock and Roll Radio, which is the first one? And I like the beginning of it. I don't know who the announcer is, but it gives you this old sound radio
That's true.
Rock and Roll Radio and the Ramones. I don't
Yeah.
know who it is.
Right.
Um,
That's a good one.
then, on the other side, they do Baby I Love You, Ronettes cover. And then
Hmm.
Rock and Roll High School is track number 10 on side 2. But
Hmm.
you got to love some of the titles of these songs. You got, do you remember Rock and Roll Radio? That's side 1, the lead track on that album, which as soon as you hear it, you're like, toot, 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 toot. Let's go. I just like
Yeah.
that. I'm Affected. Danny Says, Chinese Rock, The Return of Jackie and Judy, Let's Go. Baby I Love You, side 2. I Can't Make It on Time. This Ain't Havana. That's funny. Rock and Roll High School, All the Way, High Risk Insurance. What's your next album?
Well,
Spencer?
I'd like to mention something. The song Danny Says is about Danny Fields, their manager. So everybody knows that. That was on the album, which is a nice little trivia thing. The next
like
album.
the trivia stuff. All right.
This is I really like this cover. Peter C. Johnson. He was managed by Mike Limbo of Mike's Management. And this was CBS. By the way, the last album was 1979 with Sire. This one was on CBS Records. Let's see here, 1980. CBS Records. And this album cover was overseas. But look at the front cover. And now look at the back cover.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
It's a great cover. It's absolutely a great cover. The photographs are great. And Peter had a really wacky mind. So it's perfect with the surgeon's cap on and carrying the TV. And, he was just that type of guy,
I don't remember Pete C. Johnson. So what type of music was that? And what are some of the tracks that are found in that particular album?
Kaboom. I Can't Paint for You, 9 o'clock, College Girl, Lace with You, side 2, Jezebel, Pale Blue Eyes, Plowing My Mind Through You, Goodbye, Dear Friend. I don't know how you describe his music. You'd have to hear it.
Well, all right, let's go to the next album cover.
Next one is a great artist named Robert Ellis Oral. Title, Fixation. Now, look at the front.
I love it.
Now look at the back.
Okay, this is great.
But anyway, Steve Byram, David Gambale did the artwork on this with Steve Byram, who's very famous. By the way, Steve Byram designed the Beastie Boys with a plane crashing into the mountain. That album cover.
Everybody knows that.
He's a very famous designer, Steve Byram. The first time I worked with him. And I did the typography on this, and the illustration was literally given to me. So everything was really very easily put together, but it's a beautiful. This was a lot of shows. This album cover, because of the front and how the front worked with the back cover, and I thought it was really good. RCA put this album out in 1981, and it was overseas. Go ahead.
And what was the critical reception musically for this album?
Oh, it was pretty good. It wasn't like a top seller, but it was okay. Wi-Fi Records was the record company, and they had a deal with RCA. So Wi-Fi was overseas, and RCA was in the United States. I don't think they really pushed the album, to tell you the truth.
I think it's one of those, every once in a while, you can go, now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Every once in a while, you can go into a record store, and if you're just a little bit different than the rest of the herd, you can find works of art as a result of looking at that album cover. And I would frame something like that. Again, what I would do with this one is I would have a big enough frame where or 2 different frames on the same wall would have the front and back.
Wow.
So
yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
you brought out a good point, because sometimes when I show covers, I really have to show the back cover, because like Marshall Crenshaw, which we'll show in the second interview, it's the front and the back, and as
and when you pull it together, it makes one scene.
That's what makes the cover, right? That makes the good graphics. But a lot of albums just have a front cover, a good front cover. The back cover, forget about. Most of the albums, it could be a knockout front cover.
So, let's go to the next one. I think I know what this is. Don't say no. All right. I was so ready for this. One of my favorite albums that I don't think that there was a bad track on it,
Right.
Spencer. Now, I do have the track listing that we'll get to, but wow, talk about an iconic album that really put Billy Squier on the map.
Right.
Uh, a lot of people equated him to the sound of Led Zeppelin, which I could see that. But above and beyond that, kudos to you for being on, unbeknownst to me up until recently, being the guy that was part of this project. That's just
Oh,
amazing. That
I got to
that
tell you
that
this.
must blow your mind.
This is a great story because I was interviewed on MTV because of this album cover, and that was my first. I was the first album cover designer interviewed on MTV because of this album cover. But what makes it is Billy always said, I saw him at City Winery play, and he said, "This is my album," he said on the stage. What made this album very different, as you well know, is that Reinhold Mack produced it and gave him a raw sound, which he never had before or after. And with all the amazing songs that you mentioned, it was a no-brainer multi-platinum album. I mean, all the songs are great. It had that very raw guitar sound, though. That was very different for him. He never did that before or after, by the way, in production. I got to tell you the story with the photograph. Jeffrey Thomas, who did our Bon Jovi cover, we had to do this in 48 hours. So it was like a real rush job. And he had to catch a plane, Billy. So I got Jeffrey
hours.
Thomas came in. Jeffrey was a really great photographer. He did the Victory cover. You'll see stuff down the line that he did with us. But he takes Billy down to the bathroom, and the photograph turns out you see Billy's foot exposed, and the record company went nuts. He said, "We can't have this on the cover. We can't have a bare foot on." I couldn't believe this. I converted the photograph, by the way, from a photograph into this color Xerox, and that's what makes it really raw. In fact, Tony Bongiovi at the power station ran around with my cover one day, showing everybody in the studio what an album. He said, "This is what a rock and roll album cover should look like." How do you like that story?
What a great album! And I remember being on the radio, right, and thinking to myself, "Wow, this guy's got 5 tracks off the same album that I remember really well." In the Dark, The Stroke, which I think was a top 10 hit,
That's great.
went to number 3. My Kind of Lover, Lonely as the Night. Not only that, I do remember 2 Days Gone, which I thought was a great track. He also does Nobody Knows, a tribute to John Lennon. I Need You, Don't Say No is the title track. And What Do You Want From Me, which I don't even remember that song, but now that we've mentioned it, I'm going to go give that one a listen. And the 30th anniversary, can you believe they have a 30th anniversary edition? They do live My Kind of Lover, The Stroke Live, and Untitled Rock Mix. So great album with a great album cover, which was inspired by Spencer Drate. A great job on that.
I got to tell you that I got a call at midnight from Mitch Schoenbaum at Capitol Records. He says, "You got to come over. This is midnight." And it was about, for the first time, I didn't know what it was about. And then he played me the cassette of Billy's album. And I sat there, Zach, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, this is going to be a monster." I didn't have to guess about this one. So I just want to tell the people out there, we're calling this series called Designing for Music. And why we're calling it, it's a great title. And it was our first book in 1992, profiling the top music designers. And it was sold out. A beautiful book with John Posh in it, Vaughn Oliver, John Berg, all the big names. We're in it, but it's all about that book. Meant a lot to us, and I think the title is great for this series, Designing for Music.
I like that, Designing for Music. I like it.
Good.
I think we're gonna be doing this for many years to come, because there's so many different things to talk about.
Oh yeah,
it's an expose of rock albums, the album art.
And you know what, Zach? It's not only albums, but we can go into 45.
All right, Spencer, we got to roll on. So until next time, you have yourself a good one.
Next time the next time will be interview 2 with Judith and me on our album covers, and we're looking forward to that. Designing for Music.